Hey, Happy New Year. Clearly, you are excited about this new year. And by the way, there are about 200, a little less than 200, freshmen and new students that will be joining us in classes. We want to welcome you. And, we missed you. We had a break between Christmas and New Year. Those days off were pretty great for many of us. I don't know what you did over Christmas. I want to show you what I spent my time doing at Christmas. This picture is of Maddie on the right, and then Joshua, just about 3 months old, and that's Titus on the far left, and Georgia in the middle, and those are our grandkids. And that's kind of, so do you know family at Christmas? Did you do that? Did you go home and you remembered Mom's great cooking and got to look under a tree? Actually, Andrea brought those kids this morning, and she's really brave because at some point when a young mom and her children leave, just know that chapel went too long and they needed to go. So thanks for coming this morning, you guys. It's good to have you here. I have to tell you that I love this chapel. I love the first chapel of the semesters. I love this one in particular because this is the chapel that is the new year. This is the chapel where we get to start out like fresh. Even though the academic year started in September, here we are in January. And it's a unique place to be. I'm going to talk about that this morning in where I think the mission of Azusa Pacific is calling us in light of our university passage this year in Romans 12. So if you've been listening to the news, you'll see that, we love to look back when the calendar turns. And we've been looking back at 2016. What a year. By the way, there are a lot of people who are talking right now, thank goodness 2016 ended. What a terrible year it was. I got to tell you, that's not me. There were some things in 2016 that really marked me and God used to grow me and stretch me. There were certainly some things in 2016 that I wish didn't happen or I wish had happened differently or some do-overs for me. But I look back on 2016 and say, so what are the lessons? I was thinking, Wall Street Journal does this series of articles, and they were looking back in 2016. I just checked off a couple of what made that year significant. Certainly the 2016 general election was a significant event for everybody in the country, and there was a lot of conversation around that. There was the conversations around violence against minorities in members of communities around America, and you remember that those conversations gave us an opportunity to come together and in some ways even divided us further. We celebrated the Olympics in the late summer, and that's always a wonderful thing to see the world come together. This is the time of year when people say, okay, who famous died? It's a really happy thing to read about. But no, because you remember these significant people. So I just wrote a few of them. David Bowie, Prince, Nancy Reagan, Muhammad Ali, Fidel Castro. Just recently, Carrie Fisher dies, and her mother, Debbie Reynolds, passes just after her, famous out of Hollywood. And so these current conversations, who passed last year, and that always gets us thinking about who's going to die this year. So look around, who... No. I was thinking more of a positive way to start. On my desk, I keep a calendar both to remind me of notes during the day, but most of it's digital. But you kind of turn the page, you get a brand new calendar. I have a friend, actually an alum of the university, and she is really into cats. And so her new calendar, I am sure, has pictures of all kinds of cats. That's not me. My new calendars aren't going to look like cats. Your arrival on campus, you had a brand new page of classes you're going to go to and figuring out where those classes met and who these new faculty were. It's a brand new semester for your learning. And I wonder then, if you look back at 2016, if you think about how you're different, one of the questions I love to ask in the discipleship groups that I'm a part of, we ask each other, how am I different today than I was a week ago? How am I different today than I was a month ago? How am I different today than I was a year ago? So just think about your 2016. And let's just say in January 2017, how are you different? What's changed in you from where you were 12 months ago? And I wonder how you would say, as a disciple of Christ, as a person who has oriented my life around the truth of Scripture and the reality of His Holy Spirit in my life, I wonder how I'd want to be different in a week or a month or in a year, or actually, I wonder how I would want to be different in May. Do you remember this? This is a picture of the APU gate. By you guys, there's not 3,000 people watching you leave the building, so don't worry about it. Remember this picture? All of you here walked through the gate, unless you slept in that day. And this is actually a picture of the gate being opened at our December commencement in this building. We had 3 commencements: undergrad, graduate, and university college. And so we tell you to begin with the end in mind. And the end is this: graduation. I intentionally asked for a picture that had blank seats. There will come a day, if it's in May or if it's in December. If it's in May, it'll be in this stadium, and there will be 8,000 people watching you commence. If that doesn't cause you a little worry, then you'll think of some ingenious way to have all eyes on you while you walk across the stage. And we say to you, when you walk through that APU gate with the seal on either side, the reason we have you walk through that gate is we say, look, you're gonna start with the end in mind, and you're gonna walk through that gate only 2 times. Once when you come as a student, freshman, or transfer, and then that day that you commence across the stage and I hand you a diploma. You walk through the gate twice, once coming in and once going out. And that's kind of a great way to think about life. Life has beginnings and endings, and then these in-betweens. I wonder how you'll be different in May. You see, between now and May, I did a little math. In days, there are 119 between today and the day you commence if you're a senior. There are 2,856 hours, and if we are keeping track of our heartbeats, even sitting in this chapel, there's 171,360 seconds. And there is nothing you can do to stop that. Those seconds and hours and days will accumulate to the 6th of May. You'll do relationships, and you'll do midterms, and you'll do finals, and you'll learn and grow, and you'll have conversations that stretch you and cause you to discover God's plan and purpose in your life. But between now and May 6th, I wonder how you'll grow. Romans is our chapter for this year. Romans 12 is our university passage. And we spent the fall semester kind of in verses 1 through 8 looking at the opportunity and request that we have to place our lives before God and to do that in acts of obedience. And this semester I was actually talking to Woody before we both left for Christmas, and we're excited about what will happen in the verses that unpack between 9 and the end of the chapter, where Paul really lays out for us what it means then to act on that obedience. What would it look like for us between now and May 6th? How would we think about being different? How would we grow in our obedience to Christ and in our call and capacity to love? This passage is from the New Revised Standard Version of Romans 12:9. Let me read it to you. Let love be genuine, hate what is evil, hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection, outdo one another in showing honor. And this from the Message, just because I love the way that Peterson calls us to accountability. Love from the center of who you are. Don't fake it. You ever had anybody fake their love? Have you ever faked your affection? Something less than authentic? Run for dear life from evil. Hold on for dear life to good. Be good friends who love deeply. Practice playing second fiddle. So there are habits that define us. Paul, in this second half of Romans 12, says, look, if you're going to walk in obedience, there are ways to behave that if over time you put these habits deep in your heart, you become more Christ-like. You become more like the person that your neighbor wants to be with, that influences in a positive way your neighbor. From that passage in Romans, these habits emerge. The first is to be a good friend. After verses 9 and 10, Paul actually says, rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with others. This morning here on West Campus in the second and third row are students that I was with at the Cape Town campus in South Africa in the fall. And one of the reasons I love visiting students who are studying abroad, especially in countries where they have a minority voice in a majority culture, is because of the influence and impact that has. So I happened to be able to spend a lot more time with the Cape Town students than the Maritzburg students on this trip. And so we called ourselves the Cape Town Crusaders. And we had great food and got to go to some amazing service sites. But what always impacts me, what always foretells for me that this study abroad is a powerful experience is when these students report out what has happened to them, what they have received from the South African culture. And what never fails when I talk to them is when they begin to talk of their own, how they have taken on the cultural and social and spiritual burdens of the communities they've been placed in. Stripped away from the familiar here in Southern California, they go to the unfamiliar. And in being good neighbors, they rejoice with those who rejoice and they weep with those who weep. And many of the service sites that they attend, whether they're nursing students or psychology students or education students, they have the opportunity to witness firsthand those who are weeping. And boy, do they have the opportunity to celebrate with those who are rejoicing. And Paul in Romans 12 says, look, here is a habit. If you want to be the kind of person God has called you to be, if you want to be the kind of person who will move to growth and development, then the people who know you should experience you as somebody who comes close to them when they are weeping and rejoices with them when they are rejoicing, that you're not just one or the other. It's your maturity and your obedience and your discipleship allows that. You will be a good friend who rejoices and weeps. Second thing, by the way, that Paul says in that is be hospitable. Give hospitality to strangers and guests. I have the privilege of, in the fall, I get to teach a class, a business ethics class for senior sim. So graduating seniors, many who are business majors, some who aren't. There are about 24 of us. We meet in the boardroom in the second floor, Ronald, and I team teach that course with our board chair, Peg Campbell, and Dennis Bachman. But Peggy Campbell, our board chair, who has a deep appreciation for students on this campus, we've been teaching this class together for a lot of years. And a number of years ago, she said, look, John, one of the things I want a student, after they've spent a semester to me, to know what it means to be hospitable, to know what it means to to sit down with others and have a conversation. So we decided a long time ago that on Tuesday evenings, we would stop in the middle of class and do a complete dinner together. How's that for, there's no lab fee for that dinner either, it just comes. Really, Peggy in her generosity provides a sit-down meal. A few years ago, we had been doing that, and by the way, great things come out of that. We form a tight community, and we learn about each other, and so, in the books before and after dinner, but we stop class in the middle. A few years ago, Peggy said, you know what, John? If we're really going to teach hospitality, we have to eat off of real plates. So she went out and bought a whole set of plates and real silverware. And what that means also, by the way, is that when dinner's over, we get to do the dishes together and put them away on the shelf. If you go into the boardroom, there's actually a cabinet that Peggy gets to keep her stuff in. Her plates, her silverware. And it's a powerful moment because when dinner comes, we get out the plates and silverware and we have this conversation. Why do we eat off of plates? This year at our last class is always kind of a Christmas deal. You may do that in your own fall classes. And so we had dinner. Of course, this class loves to have dinner. We had dinner at my house, and Jan Wagner, who's the administrative assistant in my office, had for 2 months gone to used secondhand stores, and she purchased these kind of old plates. Have you ever been into a thrift store? You see they have these stacks of plates, and she looked for these cool-looking plates, and she got enough plates for everybody in the class. And on that last night together, we gave as our gift to the class their own plate. And we said, wherever you go when you graduate, in your own apartment or in your own home, when you have a guest over, if you could use this plate and explain that one of the things you learned at Azusa Pacific was that extending hospitality is one way that we can be a good neighbor with people who sometimes feel left out. So how are you experiencing receiving and giving hospitality? Because honestly, it marks you as an emerging adult, and it will mark you today and in your life. Paul says, be a good friend who rejoices and weeps with others. Give hospitality to strangers and guests. And then he says, be a good neighbor. Don't make the decision to be a good neighbor based on popularity or affinity. Just be a good neighbor. Just be a good neighbor. And then he says this really challenging thing. He says, bless your enemies. Don't get even with them. I just have to say, if I were to have 5 minutes in conversation with anybody in this room, I'll bet after just a few minutes, if we trusted each other, I could share with you the names of people that I don't think like me because of the way they've treated me. And I'll bet you could share with me the names of people that you think don't like you because of the way they've treated you. Paul says, those people fall in a category that our responsibility isn't to tolerate them. It isn't to put up with them. It isn't to ignore them. Paul says our responsibility to those people is to bless them. To bless them. To give them something over and above what they otherwise would deserve. Paul calls them enemies. He says if you have enemies, find ways to bless them. Find ways to feed them or welcome them. Or if they have a need, meet the need. But don't let their treatment of you affect your ability to love them and bless them, to be the neighbor that God has called you to be. I got to tell you, that second part of Romans 12 is a really challenging thing. So between now and May, how do we develop that habit of weeping with those who weep and rejoicing in being the neighbor that God calls us to be and practicing hospitality? How do we do that? How do those habits grow up in us? How do we become who Paul has called us to be? I think the way we do that is is we practice those habits that form those behaviors in us. Last fall, the Black Student Association, the BSA, had a candlelight vigil where they created a poster called Prayers for Black Lives. And on the screen is a picture of that. I've had the privilege of seeing this poster in my office. Actually, one of the admins, Rachel, actually laminated it and created it so it could withstand the weather. And our response to this, if you were invited into this conversation, or if you came to the candlelight vigil, was to read the narratives, the stories of people who have suffered at the hands of others, and their stories are on this poster. And then we got a chance to respond back to that, to say, this is how I think I could make a difference, or this is my empathy, or this is my love extended to this family or person. Jamila and I have been talking about how to make this available. We're going to have this on Cougar Walk. I know it's raining today, but it'll be around if you, between now and Thursday, when it's supposed to be sunny, you can go by where the BSA offices are, or later in the week. But this is one first step for what it would mean to extend hospitality and to be conscious and aware of others who are at a place of rejoicing or weeping. And I was thankful that BSA was willing to extend that. I have another example. So I must confess, I've confessed a few things in this chapel over the years. I will confess that at the end of a hard day or a hard week, I will sneak over to Chick-fil-A right across the street. Now, I love their food. You've heard me say that they have the best milkshakes in 50 miles, unless there's another Chick-fil-A in that 50 miles. Sometimes when I wonder if Gail's watching this online today. Sometimes when I'm headed home at the end of the day and I'm really hungry, I will go through the drive-through line at Chick-fil-A. Uncertain yet what I'm going to have for dinner, but let me tell you why I sneak into Chick-fil-A at the end of the day or go through the drive-in. Because everybody there treats me as if I'm important. I'm serious. I have never had an angry word at Chick-fil-A. I mean, even when there's a long line to get in the drive-thru, they send people out to take your order before you get to the talking box thing, you know? And even that person will say, hey, do you need a menu? Like, you haven't made up your mind. I'm one of those guys, yeah, I need a menu, and they're patient with you. I love the environment at Chick-fil-A. I love it. And then the fact that the owner and his family are so generous to us in many ways. Carlos, you extend hospitality and generosity to us. I don't know that there is a club or an organization or an event that you haven't showed up and provided for us. You are a model of what it means to extend what we just talked about, Paul calling us to be. I mean, forget that it's really good for business. Honestly, I mean, I love that it's good for business, but you guys do that. So in September, I told at the board meeting, I said to the board, we have a company right across the street who lives out the call of Christ in powerful ways, and they model for us what it means to be a neighbor. And so the board, in a kind of unofficial capacity, because we don't know what the legal parameters on this are, empowered me for this plaque that we're going to give to Carlos today. And let me tell you what it basically says. It says, thank you. And we are unofficially naming you the South Campus. So, listen, come on, hurry up here. Let's do this. If you were somebody's neighbor, And they were looking for the best example of what it meant to be hospitable. Would you hang their plaque on your wall? Would they honor you in such a fashion? So I just want to say, it's with gratitude and deep appreciation that you live out your faith in the way you do and are the neighbor you are.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So I expect them on time later.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So Carlos expects you on time later. He preached a month or so ago at Grace Church of Glendora, so I said, I'm not giving him the mic. We'll never get out of here. He has a great word. And then, do you remember this picture? When we started, most of us were part of a candela. And by the way, when you graduate, whether it's in December or May, we do this again. And you may remember that we said, we do this as a symbol of your training. We want to train you to be light in a world who's looking for people who are willing to weep with those who weep, be joyful with those who are joyful, to be the neighbor God calls you to be. Last week, we had a spiritual refocus day for faculty and staff in Upper TCC. We had half of the faculty and staff in the morning and half the faculty and staff in the afternoon. And one of the staff members, who's also an alum of APU, Michael Jordan, who's married and he has 3 kids. He and his wife have 3 kids. They're both alum. We had 3 or 4 faculty and staff tell their story. And he said, okay, I want to tell you a story. He said, over Christmas, my family and I visited Knott's Berry Farm. And I had on an APU sweatshirt because it was a cold day and he has APU sweatshirts. And he said I was standing in a pretty visible place and a woman comes up to me and says, can I borrow your cell phone? And he's thinking, I don't typically loan my cell phone out to strangers. And before he could kind of frame his response, she said, you're from Azusa Pacific University. He had his sweatshirt on. She said, I know you. I have family that work at your university. I'm in desperate need of a cell phone so I can contact my family. And I know you will loan me your cell phone. So let me translate what she said. I know you. You come from a place that prepares good neighbors. You have a reputation because of what's on your shirt for hospitality. In my desperate place of needing a phone, I know that I can ask of you because if it's within your power, you will help me. I would that every APU alum, in the name of Jesus Christ, with or without their sweatshirt on, would be that neighbor in response to what Paul is asking of us in Romans 12. Between now and May 6th, I ask that you would develop those habits of hospitality, neighborliness, comfort and joy for strangers, and accommodation and blessing of your enemies, so that you may become who God has called you to be. Shalom. Have a great spring semester.